This is activity 19 for level 1 electronics, and in this activity we're going to use a single transistor to control multiple LEDs. To see this and all the other level 1 electronics activities, visit jb.works and enter the TMT code shown at the bottom of the screen at the search prompt. In this activity we're going to use a transistor to control three LEDs at the same time. So this is very similar or practically identical to the circuit that we did in activity 18, where we used a transistor to control one LED, but here we're controlling three. So if you look at the LEDs here, if I unplug the base, it turns off, and if I plug it back in, it turns on. Although you might notice that the blue LED is not turning on at all, the green one's a bit dim, and the red one is perfectly good. And that's because we're only supplying the circuit with 3 volts. So I'm going to give it 5 volts, and what you'll see is that all of the LEDs turn on, including the blue one, and I'm still able to turn them on and off using the base connection of the transistor. So let's go and see what we need to make the circuit. For this activity you need a charged JackBord, a JackBord top, and 15 short female to female jumper wires. This is the circuit for our activity. The main difference between this and activity 18 is the section here. Because in activity 18 we had one LED, in this activity we've got 3, but other than that everything else is the same. We have 3 volts being supplied to the LEDs via a 1K resistor, and that travels through the LEDs and into the collector of the transistor. And then over this side we have a 3 volt line supplying a 1K resistor that feeds the base of the transistor. The big difference is this slot here. Now this block, we have the pin 2 of the first 1K resistor going into pin A1, which is this one, and then A2 to 4 are connected to the red, green and blue LEDs. And so that takes care of the block A, or the first set of user pins. The second set of user pins are the B ones. And so basically B1, 2 and 3 are connected to the transistor and the negative lines of the LED. And then B4, which is this one, is connected to the collector of our transistor. So looking at the wiring diagram on this side, which looks pretty busy, what I've done is the yellow wires are these guys, these jumpers. The white wires, the ones that goes into the LED, are these ones, those guys. And then the orange wires, which go from the negative side of the LED into the collector, are the orange wires. And then we have the ground wire is this green one. And finally the wires that control the base of the transistor are the 2 blue ones. So you've got 3 volts going into the 1K resistor going into the base of the transistor. So let's have a look and build the circuit. Okay, so now let's assemble our circuit. So we'll just put the JackBord to the side. Now the first thing we'll do is put a yellow jumper in here for the 3 volts, and that goes into our first 1K resistor. And then the second wire from that, which will also be yellow, goes into pin A1 of the first set of user pins. Then from there we're going to use 3 white jumpers, and I'm using the same color jumpers deliberately to make it more apparent as to which bits connect to which bits. So don't worry if you haven't got the right number of jumpers of a certain color. The main thing is that you have the ends connected to the right places. So I'm going to go from my first pin into the red LED. Second one is going to go into the green LED. And the third one is going to go into the blue LED. So now I've got power going from the 3 volts across a 1K resistor and into my 3 LEDs. So the next thing we're going to do is use some orange jumpers because we need to connect these negatives of the LEDs to the second set of B user pins. So again, we'll start with the red one, goes into B1. Then we go with the green LED, and that goes into B2. And then the blue LED goes into B3. And if you're not sure what I mean when I'm saying B3, B1, B2, go back to the circuit explanation and you can see it in the top right hand corner. So now we've got the grounds, or the negative lines from the LEDs, connected to the first 3 pins of the B user pins. Next, we need to connect these guys to the collector. So we're going to use another orange wire, and that will go round to the collector, which is right here. The next thing we're going to do is we need to control the base. So we take a blue wire and go from the 3 volts to the second resistor on there, so 1K. And then we're going to go from the other side of that second resistor, which is pin 4 on the resistors, and we're going to connect it to the base, which is the middle pin of the transistor, like that, right there. Okay. And then our last connection is going to be a ground connection from the emitter of our transistor to one of the ground pins. And that goes in there like that. So that's the emitter, and it's coming around the ground to this ground pin. So now that we've got the circuit built, the next thing is we'll connect it to the JackBord. So again, just use a ground pin into port D, yellow wire into the 3 volt line, and finally the 5 volts into the 5 volt line. And there we have our finished circuit. In this picture you can see we have the yellow jumpers connected from the 3 volts via the 1K resistor to the A1 pin of the user pins at the bottom. And then from A2, 3 and 4 are all connecting to the input pins of the LEDs. In this picture we can see the 4 orange jumpers. So the first ones, B1, B2 and B3, go to the negative pins of our LEDs. And then B4, which is the one on the far left, goes to the collector of our transistor. And this is our completed circuit. And the last jumper we put in was the green one in the middle, which goes from the emitter of the transistor right round to the negative ground pins on the front of the top. And now we're going to see how the circuit works. Now that we've built it, we turn on the JackBord and we should see the LEDs turn on, and they do. But you'll also notice from before they're not very bright. So if I just move them over to the 5 volts, and now they're very bright. And I can control them by simply turning the transistor on and off. So you can try other things, like see what happens when you use different values for the resistors into the transistor's base. So you could try much bigger ones like 10K, 100K, or even a megaohm. And likewise, see what happens when you add more LEDs onto the circuit so that it's controlling all 5 instead of just 3. There are lots of things that you can do to just experiment and see how these things work. For more information, visit jb.works.